Welcome to the Feel Better, Be Better show. Today, Kate and Nevada will answer your questions and introduce new topics designed to help feel better and be better. These are raw conversations, but they will make a difference.
All right, great show, Kate. Yep, just had a real good one.
Talked about a lot of personal relationship stuff.
We did? I thought we did recipes.
Yep, only recipes.
Meal prep recipes, right?
No.
No? Okay, yeah. Nope, serious, like, relationship stuff and everything. It's great, because I'm just such an old hand at those.
Relationship and finance stuff.
I've had like 3 of them in my life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of them almost did an anniversary. Crazy. So, anyway, yep, no. Prenups, relationships, do's and don'ts, child custody, all the high points that everyone wants to talk about.
Yep.
Enjoy the show. All right, let's see here. I don't really see any other way to go into this topic other than to just dive right in.
Go straight in.
I think we just head right into it then.
Okay.
So, a little bit touchy subject, but let's go for it. Kind of wanted to hear your thoughts, opinions, feelings. Of course, I'll be more than happy to tell you mine. But
no, because yours are a secret.
Yeah, super secretive, super secret. On prenuptial agreements. It's an interesting topic. Kind of in our financial thing. Kind of had a conversation the other day with somebody. They were kind of shocked at my stance on that one.
You told somebody else, but you didn't tell me when I asked you?
Oh, we were talking about it at work.
Okay.
Sorry. You didn't ask.
I did too.
Yeah.
I said you'll have to wait.
We were on text message.
So you'll have to wait till we do the show.
Yeah, I did not say that. I said it'll be an interesting show then. Since you haven't heard it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I find this interesting because you have had and executed and done through all the way through on a prenuptial agreement. So I figured you probably would have an interesting perspective on this one.
Yeah, I did. And interesting because usually it's the man, not the woman, who asks for a prenup. Most of the time, due to money and assets coming into marriages.
There's probably going to be a lot of stereotypes in this one.
Yeah. So, it's a little probably on the reverse. There's probably more women that ask for it out there than you realize. But what you would typically think of wouldn't have been me asking the person I was going to marry to make this agreement. But no, for my situation, I came into going to get married, and my sisters and I owned farmland together under our individual names, but it was all 3 of us, so it was a combined ownership. No LLC, nothing really to protect it. And my dad asked me to consider doing a prenup before getting married, so that way if something happened, whether it be divorce or if something happened financially with the person I was marrying, or he got in a major accident and had a bunch of liability money or whatever, just to try to protect myself and my assets and my sisters from something negative that happened.
Well, basically end up in the fact that if something did happen, that it wasn't like your sisters and your husband.
Yeah, because it very much could have been like, oh, we're getting divorced, and now the farmland split. They each get a third, and then my third is divided between the 2 of us, and now you have this awkward dynamic that you all 4 still have to communicate and work through stuff and all of that. So Daniel gives me such a hard time for this, the lawyer who helped me set up my LLC, because he gave me some advice, even though he wasn't a divorce lawyer, when I went to split stuff up, because he did some title work for me. But I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lawyer that I went and saw at the time, and so I used LegalZoom, and they did a fantastic job. Daniel said it was very well done. Nice. And I know.
You don't usually hear that one.
I know. But no, they put everything in there that, it was strictly the assets that we were bringing into the relationship were ours if we parted ways, and anything that we agreed that anything that we jointly got together would be between the 2 of us and would be split even.
So for example, the simple thing, you had your lands. That one was basically, so if something were to happen and you were going to split the land, yours. Everything else, everything else. But anything else that was both of yours, then you start getting into 50-50s.
Yeah.
Like that one just kind of holds it out.
Yes, and then it can't be used as like a negotiating tool. Like you have so much more because you have this land. It's like that doesn't even count.
Yep.
When we look at splitting up everything. So, and he was very cool with that. Luckily understood, didn't have any hard feelings against it, and was like, no, yeah, let's totally do it. It's your stuff. If something happens, like, yeah. And then when we did get divorced, I mean, we were pretty amicable.
Amicable.
Yeah, that word.
I'm the one that can pronounce that
one. So, I mean, he didn't try to push back on it or anything. The interesting thing, though, is, state of Kansas with, what is it, the Homestead Act?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, when I sold farmland while we were separated, not divorced, he still had to sign off on everything, even though I had an agreement that he had no interest in it, it was mine. When we got divorced, I still had to specifically name it in there that it was mine and put everything else and go through like all the process that you would if it wasn't in a prenup. And so I'm like, I get how like if you had a legal battle, it would really like help you, but at the same time, like you still had to go through all the steps. It didn't exclude that from when you got separated. So, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I take it that you were pretty happy that ended up being in place.
I mean, it was nice to know that I had the protection. I don't think, luckily in my case, I don't think that he would have ever pushed to try to take any of that from me anyway or put anything against me.
You want to be part of the partnership of you and your sisters?
Yeah, have you met my sisters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Yes.
The three of us together is a lot. So no, he did not want to be a part of that. Yeah.
It was such a huge moneymaker too.
Oh yeah, ton. But at the same time, I was turning around. I sold it while we were separated and bought rental properties right after we got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a bunch of just money in transition from selling that, which was, a large sum, and then went into something else that did make more money. So, I mean, theoretically, you could come back and be like, no, I'm going to just mess everything up now and want my part of it. And, I mean, I thought it was nice in my situation. I felt like it worked, and I don't know that it's right for everybody, but it allowed me protection of the things that I brought in.
Mm-hmm.
So now going forward in the future, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to relook at it because, like you said, I just had a little bit of farmland. Now I've got, more assets than I did. But I'm also, if I get married, probably going to grow a lot of stuff with that person too. So I don't know what that conversation would look like or how you would want to set that up.
Yeah.
Because I haven't looked at that yet.
Yeah, more assets, more problems. Isn't that how the song goes? Something like that? Sure. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. So, anything else before I ask you your opinion?
No,
that I'm super curious about.
I know. Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts and feelings on it?
Well, see, I kind of disagree on the maybe not for everyone. I think, and to me, the entire stereotype is an interesting thing to me on that one. I understand why it's kind of like the guy's protecting himself, but I think in particular, there are more women should want it, and in particular because if the scenario plays out where we're just going to stick with divorce. I don't want to get into all the other things, but let's just say you're going to end up in divorce. A lot of times, a woman had to take off to give and raise the baby, the kids, and that's probably usually that's where you start seeing some of the income gaps. Usually the man keeps going on, the woman goes, kind of plateaus or goes down. You usually become a little more financially dependent on that person, typically. And thus, you're trying to later on, when you don't have that agreement in place beforehand, trying to get some kind of negotiation with people that are splitting. And let's face it, I mean, there's not a divorce ever. I'm sorry, there were both parties are like, yeah, we gave it our best, good try. Still see you on Friday? That doesn't happen. I mean, you're divorcing for a reason. I would rather see women in particular going to that and going like, all right, let's create a plan for if something really crappy happens, of how we're going to do this. And that way you can kind of get the person to agree to what is going to happen when they're really in love with you. Let's get it when times are times are good. Not when people are hiding assets or, trying to get one over on somebody else because they want the dog or something. I mean, there's just craziness that happens in divorces. So I think in particular, if I was one, I would want that protection. And that's kind of what I look at. And then on the guy's side of things, I think it really helps them because then they don't get that thing where they think they can do something. They also kind of know it. And I love how people are like, well, you're kind of giving a blueprint of how to divorce. And I'm like, that's like saying, why do you buy fire insurance on your house? I mean, because you want it to burn down? I mean, to me, they're very similar. I mean, we do, business, operating agreements on businesses when we go into them. I mean, we get health insurance because something might go wrong. I mean, we're surrounded by a ton of documents that kind of give us an outline of what will happen if things happen. So why wouldn't you do that going into something as serious as a marriage?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's one of those things that more people should warm up to. I almost hate it when people start saying that it's a bad thing to go into. I think it definitely benefits the woman way more to get the guy to agree with that before, as they're happily, wanting to get married.
Yeah. I think there's a huge misconception too in the fact, like, you look at I feel like a lot of times where it's talked about as celebrities who have a ton of money that nobody can even like fathom, and then marry someone else with a ton of money, and it's just like it's not realistic to people in that sense, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Unless you don't have anything, which most people have something coming in of value, I don't know.
Well, even if you have nothing, I mean, you could end up where your spouse just takes off at work and just is an amazing, I mean, I don't care what side it is. And when they're making that kind of money, I mean, their 401k is going to get hit harder. Everything's going to go better. You end up taking over, some of the household parental stuff or whatever. So your job's probably going to have a harder time keeping pace with that. Lights going out. Anyway, so in that situation, no matter what, whichever side it is, if you don't have something written in, that other person's going to try to hang on to as much as they possibly can. I mean, and they should. I mean, they really should. It's in their best interest. So you don't know how that's going to play out. Why don't we go ahead and set it up to get going? I mean, even if you have, and that's if you have nothing. And on top of that, I've seen too many stories of people that had to do, joint custody of pets, that had to, give people family heirlooms because it was considered, half assets and stuff like that, just wild stuff, and then later on finding out that there were bank accounts over here and this person over here and they're storing cash over here. I mean, it's just ridiculous when you start thinking about all those crazy things that can happen.
Yeah.
And I think it also makes you break down and realize the financial situation of each partner, as well as most of them, if they're done right, maybe not the legal Zoom, would almost give you an instruction plan of how you're going to actually do finances in the marriage.
Yeah, I mean, ours was really basic because, like I said, we didn't even cover like what happens if anything together. It was pretty much like, well, when you're married, everything's joint, and you can figure that out later.
Well, I think that's a common fallacy of most people.
But I mean, especially when you're young, I think you're in that mentality that because you're building everything together, even though you have maybe separate careers, it should all be together.
Yeah, well, you've been through a marriage on that one. I mean, you're still very much individual. I mean, I guess I would know, but I'm asking you. I mean, you're still very much individual people. Yeah, you're doing something together, but I mean, you still have your individual lives. And I get into that. There's multiple ways to do finances in a marriage, and they all get used. People act like they don't because we get so locked in that I think it should be like this that nobody really sees the difference.
Yeah.
Like one of the most common, probably one of the more common ones is like you talked about. You guys end up with joint checking accounts, all the money goes in, all the money goes out. That's when you can end up in those situations of like, what did you spend? How did you spend $200 at Ulta?
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Whoa, okay, Twin Peaks here for $300, that can create that kind of animosity of, why do you spend that much on that?
Yeah.
So that's one way. There's,
With that too, though, just butt in a little bit while we're still talking about joint. With that, I feel like it's really easy for like one person to get sucked into paying all the bills and keeping track of all the finances, and then it feels very lopsided.
Well, yeah, because once you kind of take that over, it's really hard because you're the one that knows where everything. So the other one really quickly is kind of like, we have money for that. Because they don't have a clue.
Because that's very much what happened with Caleb and I. I mean, I did all the finance stuff. I knew when the bills were due. I knew what money was coming in. I knew what was extra, and he didn't. And it's really hard to communicate that. Even though you have one account where you both can see everything, if you're just rolling through and you're like, oh, I know this is here and this is here and this is here, it can be very difficult to communicate. Plus, it's a pain in the butt when you do get divorced and you have to split everything because you've got bills coming in and then you've got money going out and you've got to make sure you have enough in here, but then you're splitting here, and whew, it was a lot.
Well, let's keep in mind on his side, he's sitting back the entire time where he's making the money. He's bringing all the bacon, doing the stuff. So you're working too. But I mean,
when it was the worst, though, I wasn't. I had Harper at home for 3 years.
But he's in a situation where he doesn't know, why do we not have money? I mean, he doesn't know what the bills are. He doesn't know any of that stuff. So I mean, he's sitting back going like, I'm sitting here working, making money. Why don't we have any money left? And that's an amazingly frustrating thing. I mean, finances are one of the biggest things that drive people apart.
Yeah.
So I mean, that setup almost creates a problem. And I mean, so that's one reason why that's not my desired outcome.
Which is interesting because most people would assume that would create less of a problem because it's so transparent.
Yeah.
I agree with your face, but you know what I mean.
It sounds transparent, but the truth is that somebody ends up being on it and the other one doesn't pay attention. So, and you create that divide.
Yeah.
Then you got one that I've actually seen in practice before, killed me, but it's very rarely used. And that is that both partners keep their stuff separate, and they each like pay their own way, and some of them get as intense as like basically invoicing the other one. I've seen it where it was a true invoice. Like, here's what you owe me for the meal that we went out to on this one. I've literally seen people that did that, which seems a little wild to me, but
that seems like it causes major resentment if you're not careful.
Well, here's the best part. When I saw it, the couple, she never worked. He worked. And so when he got his paycheck, he would literally write her a check for her half of the money, and then they would invoice each other for expenses they had against each other. It was wild. But I mean, hey, hats off to you. If it works for you, do it. Go for it. No problem. That's fine. The one I probably go for, though, is right in the middle. And that is, you keep your individual accounts. You have your individual income. You do your joint expenses, like your house payment or rent, your car payments or whatever, stuff that you would agree on together, utilities, groceries. You probably know this better than me. I mean, what else am I missing here? I mean, just
insurance,
childcare. Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, all those, okay, we'll create this joint account. We'll estimate those bills out. So yes, you have to do some budgeting. Sorry. So say it's $3,000 a month or whatever. Now this gets kind of interesting. Let's just use simple math. So let's say like one person makes $100,000, the other person makes $50,000, right? So what I would do in that case, it's $3,000. This one would put in double the amount of this one.
So like $2,000 or $1,000.
Yeah. So you're keeping it pretty even on the discrepancies. Some people just say $1,500. Hey, we're doing it together, but then always the person that's making more money is just going to be living large while the other person's struggling. So that's why I tend to say go with the percentages on that one. And so that's usually the way I would go about that. Then when you have joint expenses, they're coming out of that. When you have your personal expenses, you can take it out of your own checking accounts.
So, sorry, I'm visualizing here. You have like a joint one in the middle that you put your bills and the money towards that and stuff in there. And so then you have your own extra.
Yeah, you can always put the person on the account for your transparency, but then that person's allowed to do whatever they want to do with their money. So you don't end up in that situation of like, why did you spend money over here or whatever? It's kind of like, you do whatever you want with your money.
Yeah.
This is our money, and this is your money. And I mean, and then also usually, I mean, if you kind of get banking together, you can link them all. So I mean, you can have all the transparency you want, but then you don't want to get that whole thing of like, if you want to go out and buy yourself a new heel and you got the money to do it, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
Come yelling at me because I spent so much money at the gambling site.
Yeah, it almost reminds me more of like when we talk about, I mean, and it's not like a true equivalent to it, but it It almost reminds me about like when we talk about when your money comes in and you pay your bills and you set so much aside to automatically go into a savings account, and then you have extra money in your account for the month. It almost feels very similar to that in the fact like, okay, money comes in, the bills are coming out of this account. The money I know that goes to bills is automatically going to that joint account. And then you have whatever's left over. So it's already separated and you already know what you have extra and what's left for the 2 weeks or the month until you get paid again. So it has the same feel without being a savings account.
Yep, it's almost, you think you're in the right realm, but really what it is, and you're just, it's almost a forced budgeting tool.
Yeah.
Because you, in a way, you're kind of like, no, these are what our expenses should be. And if you guys are putting this much money in and it doesn't, you don't have any money left over, something's wrong with your budget. You got to reassess.
Yeah.
And then the same side, though, you don't end up, where somebody gets upset about whatever somebody's expenses are. The trick on that one is that, yeah, somebody can end up doing, one side can end up doing some really interesting financial stuff that could get you in trouble. But when you run into that either way, I mean, you are married to the person.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, that is one thing. If you would have paid somebody more than LegalZoom, they might have actually.
Don't give me a hard time. They did a fantastic job.
I'm making the charge for Daniel. I'm going.
Don't worry. I'm sure next time he'll be like, okay, we're gonna sit down and do this right, and I'm gonna find you an actual, attorney that does relationship stuff instead of me, since I do business. Because man, for a lot of stuff, with my split up, he's like, are you sure you don't want to do this? Are you sure you don't want to do that? I'm like, nah, it's fine. He's like looking at me like, I've seen the world and you are not.
That is their world.
I know. That's the thing. Even with like the business stuff, it was like in his mind, he wanted to do the most protection possible because he's seen the worst happen.
Yep.
So even though I knew like, no, my situation's fine. I don't need to go to that extreme. And it all turned out fine. It could have not. I could have been wrong, but it would turn out fine. But he's sitting back like, no, I've seen some really bad things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's not do this.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you horror stories of people that have hit me with, financial things because of my position of me trying to help them in their divorce stuff. I mean, from like, fraudulent tax returns because the other person was taking care of the finances where they were having them withhold the least amount. Then like filing marriage, filing separate, telling them that the taxes were done, so they were stuck with like no withholdings and no filed tax returns and half of the income. So I mean, they basically owed like thousands and thousands of dollars of back taxes from this other partner that was taking care of the finances.
Awesome.
Or somebody completely getting set up with, where the other person was going through college and they were paying for them as soon as they hit, where they graduated and they were going to get a job filed for divorce. And in the state that it was, it looked at basically where you were at before your marriage, not whatever happened. You can't go back and change it. So they were having to send over like 80% of their income to this person. They had a very well paying job that the other person paid them through school. It made like 3 times what they made. Now they had to pay them like 80% because it was based on that percentage of what was done in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just horror stories of like, how do you even get out of that? I mean, it's almost better not to, not to make a living for yourself. And nobody should ever be in that situation.
No.
But I think if it were me, I'd rather see people when they're happy with each other, when they want to marry each other, say, let's do this if things don't work out. And everybody gets real mad about that one, but do we really want to be in a relationship where the other person doesn't want to be in it? And if it's just for financial reasons, that's even worse.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think you kind of come back with, I think we've talked about this in business before, we've talked about it in sports. To me, it's a thing in relationships as well. You want the person you're with to want to be in a relationship with you. If they don't want to be in it, that's not a very fun relationship. That's not a very fun life.
No. Well, and relationships are hard. If you can't talk about finances and like what could potentially happen down the road if things go as bad as they possibly can, how do you think you're going to be in a relationship that's successful with someone before then? I mean, you're going to have to talk about tough stuff. You're going to have to talk about finances, and it's better to talk about that before you get married than after you get married. And then you're like, oh, I didn't even think that you might want to do, like separate in a joint account. I figured we'd put it all together. If we never talked about it, how would we ever know?
Yeah. Now, here's the last part, and this is the part that we'll probably talk about anyway. I actually, like I said, I think everybody should have a prenup.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine that if I ever get married, I will probably have one. I would actually recommend to anybody that would be marrying me that they better get a prenup. Because I obviously will be the one that's in charge of the finances. It's probably going to pretty much happen. Yeah. I'm really good at doing
You
accounts.
are, but you could let them help.
And no, that's no. And then, yeah,
sure.
Yeah, sure. But no, what I'm trying to say is that's probably going to be what happens. They can help, as well as they'll help for a little while, and then, you got it, you're good, and they'll take off and let that do it. But do you really want to catch me on the fact that I'm wanting to get divorced, and I know quite a few lawyers, quite a few accountants, quite a few accounts, try to different things. I mean, know how to get money over here, know how to do businesses there, know how to do this, value that. I mean, you do not want to go against me when I'm wanting to go out of that. Like, it's almost for your own protection. Like, let's do this plan here so I don't decide to be that guy. Sounds horrible, but at that point you will, though. I mean, you're divorcing them. You're not, like I said, you're not sitting there going like, hey, give it a shot. You're like, no, I'm done with you.
Yeah. Well, it depends too. Like if that person like did something really horrible and totally crossed the line, like it's really easy to take revenge on them for it.
Well, but to me, each side always has an issue. I mean, usually somebody's like, well, I've been carrying you financially, or I've been carrying you emotionally. I mean, there's always going to, and those are issues in even healthy relationships, let alone ones that are going to be in that divorce scenario. So I don't think everybody always feels like when they're doing that thing that it's completely justified. I mean, they could be, sheltering money with people that they barely know in cash boxes that are digging up in their ground, trying to keep it from their spouse, and they'll be able to justify the fact that it's like, well, that she already spent all this extra money anyway. I mean, it's amazing how much we can justify that in our minds. So I think it would be way better before you get to that point to have a plan in place. That is kind of my take on that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm literally like going to force somebody to get a prenup to protect against me because I know how I get. What? I mean, it sounds horrible, but I mean, at that point, I'm going to be like, no, we're divorcing. I'm going to do what I can. It's a negotiation.
Well, I already know I was a delight, so.
Oh, were you? I'm not usually that bitter, so I'm sure I'll be okay, but
I'm kidding.
It would be really hard when you know all the things you can do. And that's pretty much what I've been trained to be, is, I mean, like, these are the ways. Because, I mean, on my end, I'd be somebody you would bring in to try to make sure that the other person wasn't hiding. I mean, I've been trained on that. I haven't done that work, but I mean, I've been trained on that. So, I mean, my job would be to go look into their lives, look into their expenses, look into their details, and try to be like, where is this at? It should be this much here, or this much there, and this much this, but it isn't that. So then I'd have to go find out where it is. So I have to know how people would hide money, where they would hide money, how to find it, trails of that, and what's not. That's very untraceable.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you wouldn't want to be going through a divorce with that.
No.
That would be a little wild. That would be pretty crazy. So you got to keep that in mind when you're doing that, because you end up in those situations. People do those works. I mean, I'm just an accountant for a company, but I have to keep that training up. So. Yeah, kind of well. Any other things on that you want to talk about? It's a solid yes. I can feel it. It's like, yes, I had something.
Well, I have something, but I don't know how to word it, and you might just be like, I don't know. So then, got your prenup.
Sure.
For your stuff when you're bringing it in.
Yep.
You've got stuff that you're probably going to build up on your own sides.
Mm-hmm.
What is your viewpoint then on things that maybe you build up together, and like recommendation on, do you keep them separate? Do you put them together? Like,
I mean, do you want me to go on like a moderate of like me, since you kind of know some of this stuff? Sure. So like, so some of the assets are really clear. I mean, like I have my retirement account. I have some rental properties that I own. I mean, all of those are pretty well crystal clear. I own them, whatever. Other ones are trickier. I mean, like this business, what's the value on that? I mean, I could go to 15, very experienced accountants, and being able to value businesses, they could be 15 drastically different appraisals. I mean, and evaluations of how much it would be. So you got to find a way that both of you would agree that this is the value on that. So let's say, for example, I mean, I seriously don't believe this, but let's just make sure we understand. Say we value the company like $100,000. You would put that in there, right? And then from there, as being that's how that asset is, what you could probably write it one of two ways. Like since the real estate property or something like that, that one would be pretty easy. That one's just going to come back. Business, chances are that's going to determine how my marriage is going to go. How much I'm working there, probably helping out, probably, using some personal expenses to make sure it gets going, all that kind of stuff and everything like that. So it might be kind of hard to kind of say, oh, well, if I grow this up to a $10 billion company, I'm just going to take it back away. I mean, good luck. Because, obviously that person sacrificed and put stuff into it. So you probably have to do a thing of like, well, you get the 100,000 out, but the rest of it is going to be split 50-50. Mm-hmm. And that's why you got to do something similar to that. Of course, you would talk. I would highly recommend you talk to an attorney that knows what they're doing on that and try to find out a good solution. But those would be things to look out for. That appraisal. You can usually say the real estate stuff like that in the 401k or the IRA, whatever. What about the appreciation on that? Well, I mean, it's kind of if you're coming in with that and you keep it separate, I would highly recommend you keep it separate. So I mean, prime example would be like if I come in with an IRA. That's my retirement. As soon as I would get married, I might create another one and be like, okay, so this one is there. This one is now this way. And now that's very clear. That this one is the way I had and we accrued when we were married. This is the one I had before. Those are little simple ways you can do that. To me, the rentals are a lot cleaner.
Oh, for sure. That's basically where I was, is like, there's going to be certain things that obviously you have, but then there'll be things that, maybe together you buy a rental or whatever, and like, that's not as clear.
Yeah, see, in that case, I would definitely be that. But I mean, then when you're doing all title work, it should be the two. Mm-hmm. So I mean, but is this one? That's why it's nice to have the prenup, because those are on there. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily have to have all title work perfect on this one. I could go sign it, whatever. But if it wasn't on the prenup, then guess what? It's part of the 50%.
Yeah.
Or however you decided.
Yeah, sure.
Split stuff up. And then let's keep in mind, I mean, we kind of drastically just overlooked all the child support, what's going to happen with the kids, are you going to do, some kind of, custody scenario, you're going to spell that out. I mean, you're going to have reasons why it might not come off. I mean, it might not adhere to what you agreed to, like if there was some kind of abuse or charges or something like that. And that's the other side on the guy side. I think the stereotype is very much in lots of states. I mean, kind of the guy has to kind of prove his worth to be able to see his kid. Mm-hmm. If the mom wants half to full custody, I mean, they're going to get it. All they got to basically say is, I want it. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I mean, I totally understand why that is. But it's kind of easy to get the guy out of that picture real easy. I mean,
you can even go with the opposite and say money-wise. Because, I mean, you could be making close to the same, but the guy can still be pressured into being the one to pay more support towards their kid, because you're looked at as more bringing in the money for it versus raising it. But I've also seen it too, where like there's been a lot of moms that just because they want their kids to use them against like the relationship that they have, that they hold on to them, even if they're not fit really to be their mom all 50% to 100% of the time. I mean, I came from a situation where my parents got divorced, and unfortunately the courts gave my mom more custody than she should have had because she was my mom. If it would have been reversed to my dad, he probably never would have saw me.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are the standard normal cases. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's face it, if you're in a relationship that's heading down the divorce train with and or without kids or whatever, but I mean with kids in this scenario, there's probably going to be some situations that bubble up. Could end up with some bad stuff that may happen. Maybe a hospital stay, maybe some cops being called out. Who knows? I mean, there's some things that do happen on those situations. The numbers on those are very skewed, that if something's going to happen on that side, it's going to be on the man's side. Mm-hmm. They're going to get a charge. They're going to have something. And usually somebody's got to do something. Because I hate to break it to you, but if you call the cops out, you don't press charges, nothing happens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the problem you run into is that the cops will pretty much tell you, like, did you literally call me out here to not do anything? I mean, they're going to be not happy with that. They got saving lives and all that stuff, or somebody else can argue about other reasons. But I mean, they're out there trying to do their job, and you're going to call them over and be like, I just want to let you know that they were being allowed over there. It's not going to work out. They're going to make you press charges. 9 times out of 10, it's always going to go on the guy. Probably more than 9, but anyway. Now you're in a divorce proceeding, you got a domestic violence charge on you. I mean, now you're in a situation where you really, really, really got to find a way to be able to convince somebody to give you even 50% of custody of your kid.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, we can look all we want on these prenup agreements that they're really skewed to benefit the guy and stuff like that. But sometimes it's the guy that, I mean, very much going to need the protection, as well as when you're going into that relationship, do you really want to be the person that's going, I hope you never see your kid. But I mean, it gets that way.
Mm-hmm.
But do you ever want to be that person? I mean, I've known too many people that went through divorce later on and almost it almost ate them up. They became that person.
Yeah.
That was just bitter about it and just so upset. But if you have a plan in place that we're going to do this, then it's kind of hard to argue with.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a tough thing. And anymore, I mean, it's going both ways. I mean, you have more and more women that are getting hurt of domestic violence, but it's tough. I mean, guys can be, glass broken, bleeding down their face, and be like, nah, nothing happened. She didn't hit me with that plate. Not at all. No, it didn't happen. I mean, we're like that. So.
Yeah, kind of get made fun of too.
Yeah. Nobody wants to, dude, your wife kicked your butt again? Yeah. What do you want me to say? I dozed off during a movie. It's a love story, apparently. My bad. There's a lot of aspects that can go into that. I think it's an excellent exercise for people that are that are planning on getting married and go through that. And the process takes time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't try to show up at your lawyer's office like 3 days before going, we need a prenup. Of course, just so sure. If you have that scenario and you didn't plan ahead, you can do a postnup. It is allowed. They work just the same. One's pre-marriage, the other one is post-marriage. It's that easy, but it's still an agreement. And here's the best part. You're two consenting adults. You're both agreeing. At any time, you can come back and say, let's edit this. Things change so much. It doesn't match what we really want. Can we come back and change that again? Yep. You can always agree to change your plan. It's allowed.
It's not set in stone for life.
Sorry. You see me when we were talking about these like business ventures and we have like an operating agreement. And people are like, well, I don't know what this. What if we decided this? We'll change it. I mean, you got to get there first.
Mm-hmm.
If we all agree, like, oh, I know we said we were going to do 50% for everyone, but so-and-so is doing 75% of the work. Why don't we just go ahead and rewrite the thing to be like 75, 10, and 5. And that wouldn't work out. 10 and 10 and 5. And shocking. So
when you're doing the finances?
Yeah. You notice I got it. But anyway, if you all agree to say we're going to change that, guess what? It's changed. I mean, we act like it's a horrible thing. Well, we agreed to do that or something like that. If you want to change it, change it. Wow. So, I feel like I had more on that, but
yeah, comes back around. We'll revisit it another time.
Yeah, sure. That's what we need to do. Talk about the same stuff again.
No, it'd be like an update. It'd be like a little addition, an addendum.
Addendum?
Yeah.
I'd have to say addendum, correct?
I didn't say it like that.
I can.
Okay.
Addendum.
Yep. You can say it however you want.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I think this is done, so we'll call it a night. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you for watching. Kate and Nevada hope you've enjoyed this show and found it useful and empowering. If you have any questions or comments, please contact them at Kinetics.com. That's KNETICX.com. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. And please write a review of the show. Kate and Nevada appreciate hearing the feedback, and they welcome your reviews, and your word of mouth will help others learn how to feel better and be better.